This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV.
So tonight's Jukebox journey is not about nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's about that moment when Gen X darkness collided with a new kind of feminine intensity. For a lot of us, rock felt like it belonged to angry men with guitars. And then Amy Lee walked in, barefoot, vulnerable, furious, unforgettable. She didn't soften the genre, she sharpened it. She didn't apologize for feeling too much. She made feeling too much the point. So tonight, we're sitting in my Immortal kind of space, not as a hit record, but as a feeling that stayed with us long after the radio stopped playing it. Y'all welcome.
A boss be rising, BBTV's igniting, turn the volume up. Yeah, the whole world's invited from the gravel road to the neon dream. She built an empire out of broken wings. Boss be rising, sky ain't even the ceiling when she hits go live. Everybody feels it.
Hey, Chris. Good to see ya. Glad to have ya. All right, y'all. Welcome to Jukebox Journey, the place where we don't dust off music like a museum relic, okay? We crank the windows down, turn the stereo up, and let the stories ride shotgun with us. So this isn't a polite history lesson, okay? Usually it kind of is. And it's not with soft lighting or anything kind of crazy like that, you know? It's more like pulling up a bar stool with your favorite record, just kind of, spinning in the background while someone leans in and says, wait, let me tell you how all of this actually started. So tonight we're diving into Evanescence, not because they're safe, okay, but because they're dramatic and moody and theatrical and tender and gloriously intense. The kind of band that feels like a thunderstorm with perfect eyeliner. Yeah, I said it. At the center of that storm is Amy Lee, a woman who didn't tiptoe into rock. She strutted into it, carrying a piano, a powerhouse voice, and a whole lot of emotional backbone, right? Jukebox Journey isn't about rankings, charts, or greatest hits. Bragging rights, okay? No bragging rights here. It's about the people who crossed paths, collided, collaborated, fought, inspired, and shaped one another until the music sounded the way it does. Think less textbook, more back porch gossip with a guitar. We follow who knew who, how they met, what went sideways, and what went right, and what changed because of it. No neat genre boxes, no dusty timelines, just messy, real human connections that explain why these songs hit your chest the way that they do. If you're here live, you're not an audience. You're not. You're in the car with me. Chime in, react. Remember your own concert nights and laugh when the story gets wild, because it absolutely will. So if you're watching the replay, imagine we're two friends deep in conversation at midnight, still talking because the story is too good not to stop. Too good to stop, pardon me. Tonight, we're starting, we're starting before the fame, okay? Before Bring Me to Life. Before MTV moments. Before MTV was no longer MTV, probably. Back to the girl at a piano who had big feelings and bigger voice and zero intention of shrinking herself for anyone. We're crossing that Gen X to millennial bridge together. Following how classical training met all alternate rock grit and, created something totally its own. So grab a drink. Hey, y'all, it's Saturday night. Grab whatever you want to drink. Loosen up and let the drama, the melodies, and the connections that you remember in this carry you. Because this isn't just music history, okay? It's people history with volume turned way up. And you know what? Z-Rock used to say, if it's too loud, you're too old. I will never be too old. So turn it up. This is Jukebox Journey. And you know what? We are definitely about to roll this one. Hi, Seth. Good to see ya. Thanks for coming. Mental Rest, you too. Good to have you. Thanks for being here. All righty. So, you guys, you're going to have to give me a little bit here. I'm just going to go ahead and blurt this out now because I just got to get this out of my system because, oh my goodness. A few minutes before I'm going live, my son calls me. He says, "Hey, Mom, you got a minute?" Well, of course, I got a minute for my kid. Hello, Christian. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. I am the best. Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for saying so. But listen, so I want to share my cool news with you because this is awesome, right? So my son calls me. He says, "Hey, Mom, I need to talk to you." Okay, I got to go in a minute for my show, but what's up? Well, no, I got to come over. Me and my wife and my daughter, they're going to come over. I'm like, okay, but y'all got to hurry because I got a show. I don't want to miss you. You know, when my granddaughter came into my life, it was the biggest, bestest moment I've ever had, aside from my own children. Okay. And today I found out I'm about to be a grandmother again. Yes, I can't believe it. Oh my God, it's so amazing. I'm so happy. Y'all, I can't help it. Another baby. And I spend so much time with this one now. So this is going to be double pleasure for a grandma like me, okay? I've been begging for this. My kids are way older than I was when I had them, okay? All right, back to Amy Lee. I've shared my news. You're probably going to see how giddy I am about this, okay? But that's how it is, right? Life is good, people. Life is good. God is good. All right, Amy Lee is good too. So before the fame, we're going to get right into Amy Lee, okay? Which for everybody that just absolutely adores how come on. There I am. See? Okay. So Amy Lee, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm giddy. I can't help it. And at 54 years old, yes, you still get giddy. If anybody has that question, let me put that out there right now, okay? When it's about a grandchild, it's like extra giddy, right? Okay, so Amy Lee did not grow up like a future rock star, okay? She grew up like a kid carrying a storm inside her body that no one around her fully knew what to do with. The kind of girl who could sit silent for hours and then rip your heart open at a piano without saying a single word. Born in California, shuffled through Arkansas, she learned very early that life wasn't going to hand her stability. And you know what? That forced her to build an inner world that was darker and bigger and far more dramatic than most kids her age. Church wasn't just a place she attended, it was a soundscape that shaped her ear. All choirs, reverberation, high ceilings, and emotional tension that seeped straight into her bones. But don't mistake that for sweet church girl, okay? Because that's not the energy we're talking about here. Amy was the kid who felt too much, noticed too much. And you know what? Never quite fit anywhere cleanly. When her little sister Bonnie died at only 3 years old, that grief didn't just sit quietly in her life. Did y'all know that? Yeah. Amy Lee's lost a sibling at only 3 years old. And it cracked something open permanently. And instead of burying it, Amy translated that heartbreak into sound. She didn't just practice piano, she treated it like a confessional booth where she could scream without making noise, where sadness could become beautiful instead of shameful. So in school, she wasn't the loud rebel. She was the girl that people underestimated and the quiet one who suddenly became volcanic the second she opened her mouth to sing. Classical training sharpened her like a blade, but her imagination, well, it was already wild. Patty friend, I am doing so well. Did you just get here, honey? Because I have to reshare my news. My son, my youngest son, my middle child, was just here letting me know that I'm about to be a grandmother again. Yes, that's two for me. Two for me. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Patty friend. I needed to share that with you too, Doc, because you're my best friend. My BFF right there. All right. So, um, Amy Lee's imagination was already wild and moody and cinematic, a little bit haunted, and absolutely fearless when it came to emotion. While other kids tried to blend in, Amy leaned into being different, leaning into, I guess, the weird, right? Leaning into the dramatic because pretending to be normal felt like suffocating. Friends from those years really described her as shy in conversation, but utterly commanding at the piano, as if music was the only place she ever felt fully alive. I can understand that. Sometimes I don't even care. I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the store, I'm anywhere, and I just start belting out a song. I didn't used to have the huevos to do that, but I do now. So I do every now and then. And I mean, I've never been one to chase fame, and neither was she. She obviously got further than I did, but she was chasing a way to survive, I guess, her own intensity. By the time that she was performing publicly, she wasn't just talented, she was battle forged by loss. You know, Stubborn about her identity, really. And, well, she was emotionally dangerous in the best possible way. Okay. That tension, quiet girl on the surface, hurricane underneath, is exactly what made Evanescence inevitable. Say that 5 times fast. Woo! Y'all look at that picture of her. She's just gorgeous. So she didn't get discovered. All right. She arrived ready, carrying grief, power, and a voice that could break you and heal you in the same breath. And what people rarely talk about is how lonely that kind of intensity it can be when you're young, especially in a small town that prefers neat kids who don't ask too many questions. So Amy wasn't just different, she was emotionally electric in a place that rewarded quiet compliance, which meant she learned very quickly how to live half inside herself and half inside music. She would sit at the piano for hours after everyone else went to bed, letting chords crash against each other. I mean, like weather systems, testing how much darkness she could shape it into beauty before it swallowed her whole. There are stories of her disappearing into rehearsal rooms, hair in her face, playing the same progression again and again and again until it felt alive. Not perfect, but perfection bored her. She wanted something that hurt and healed at the same time, even before Evanescence existed. You could already see the future band in her body language, shoulders tight, jaw set, eyes searching for something no one around her could name. Teachers saw discipline, families saw sensitivity, but inside, she was already crafting a persona that refused to be small. She wasn't trying to be edgy for attention, okay? She was trying to survive her own depth. And here's the part that really matters, okay? She wasn't waiting for permission while other teenagers chased normal milestones. Amy was quietly building a sound that didn't belong to anyone else, blending classical precision with cinematic gloom and, come on, melodic instinct that, oh my gosh, it felt dangerous, but it was sincere. By the time that she crossed paths with the people who became Evanescence, she wasn't an unfinished talent. She was already a force, a girl who had learned to carry grief like fuel, to turn isolation into art, and to trust her own emotional chaos instead of apologizing for it. We all know what that's about and how we don't like having to apologize, right? So that is the foundation everything else sits on. Not luck, not destiny, but a fierce, lonely, deeply human fire that had been burning long before any record label ever heard her name. Now, what almost never gets told in clean music bios is how much tension Amy carried between what people expected her to be and who she actually was becoming. On the outside, she looked like, I don't know, a studious, well-mannered, church-raised kid. Inside, she was already wrestling with huge feelings about faith and loss and identity and what it meant to exist in a body that felt too loud for the world around her. You can imagine her in those years, headphones on, lights low, playing piano while everyone else in town was doing normal teenager things, quietly building a universe that felt more real to her than pep rallies or proms. She was the kind of girl who could sit through a perfectly polite family dinner and then turn around and go upstairs and write something so raw it felt like it came from a wound instead of a notebook. That emotional split is important, though, because it explains why her music later didn't sound like the rebellion for show. It sounded like survival. And here's the part people almost never connect. That intensity, it didn't just shape her songwriting, it shaped how she moved through the world. Amy learned early to read rooms. Hi, Lucy. Good to see ya. Sorry, I'm trying to read something there. So, like I was saying, she learned how to read rooms, to sense when she was welcome and when she wasn't, to watch people underestimate her and store that away like fuel. She wasn't plotting revenge. She was quietly sharpening herself. When she stepped onto a stage as a teenager, even in a small local settings, something shifted in her body. The shy girl completely vanished. And in her place was someone utterly certain of the sound she wanted to make. She didn't perform like she was asking for approval. She performed like she was stating a fact. That's rare. Oh, hello, Leo. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. So, that is rare, right? especially for young women in spaces dominated by louder, more aggressive personalities. By the time she crossed paths with other musicians who would later orbit Evanescence, Amy already carried a contradiction that would become the band's signature. Classical control on the surface, okay? Emotional chaos underneath. She could talk about chord structures one minute and then write lyrics that felt like a confession in the next. That blend, brain and heart, discipline and drama, is what made her magnetic before fame ever touched her. You know, people didn't just hear her voice, they felt the life she had lived in. So when you think about before Evanescence, okay, don't picture a blank slate waiting to be molded by the industry. Picture a young woman already forged by grief, sharpened by isolation, grounded by classical training, and fearless about feeling deeply in a world that constantly told her to tone it down. That is the real origin story, I think. Not a tidy timeline of schools and recitals, but, you know, a human being learning how to survive her own intensity by turning it all into sound. That inner fire is what would later collide with, you know, other strong personalities, spark creative tension, and ultimately birth came Evanescence, okay? But it all started here in quiet rooms, late nights, heavy feelings, and a girl who refused to shrink. And you know how much I am about that. No shrinking here. We don't do that because you know what? We're all worth it, no matter who, how, when, where. Plain and simple, you know? Plain and simple. And that one did not work. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm trying to talk through messing with stuff and it's not messing like I'm supposed to. Anyway, so still Texas bipolar, tripolar weather, whatever you want to call it. It's hot. It just barely got chilly today. Anyway, so Evanescence did not arrive gently or politely or strategically. It exploded into existence the way most meaningful chaos does. When two deeply dramatic human beings collide in a completely ordinary place that has no business birthing anything legendary. Okay, look, picture this. Arkansas in the late 90s. Not glamorous, not cool, not some glossy music scene, right? Just church basements, sticky floored youth rooms, and teenagers trying to survive feelings that felt way too big for their bodies. That's where Amy Lee and Ben Moody found each other. Not at a slick audition, not through a producer, but at a youth camp where nobody was looking for the next generation defying bands, okay? That really matters, okay? It's crazy to me, but it really matters to me too, because this wasn't ambition first, it was recognition first. They didn't see dollar signs in each other. They saw shared darkness. They saw the same kind of emotional intensity, the same cinematic imagination. It all pulled toward music, you know, and felt like a confession instead of entertainment. Ben was already that kid with the guitar who treated it like a weapon and a diary at the same time. Big movements, big emotions, big ideas, and absolutely zero chill. Amy sitting at the piano was quieter on the surface, but every bit as fierce underneath. The kind of girl who could make an entire room forget to breathe with one freaking note, y'all. When they first started playing together, okay, it wasn't sweet collaboration. It wasn't. It was friction wrapped in beauty. Piano didn't blend with distorted guitars. It crashed into them, argued with them. And you know what? It even eventually learned how to dance with them. Amy's classical training brought structure, restraint, and cathedral sized emotions, while Ben brought raw rock, aggression, cinematic ambition, and a relentless push towards something bigger than a basement band. So those early sessions weren't cute little rehearsals. They were emotional laboratories where ideas lived and died in real time. Sometimes they were magical. Amy at the piano, eyes closed, hair falling forward, voice floating like smoke, and Ben standing back, staring at her like even he didn't fully understand what they were creating. Pardon me. So other times they were straight up volatile, right? Ben wouldn't want heavier riffs. And then he would. And then he wouldn't. And then he would. Bigger hooks. More bombast, more drama, more this could be on the radio right now. And Amy would plant herself at the piano and refuse to move an inch, insisting that the soul of the music could not be sacrificed for punch. Hey, what's up? You're back. Good to see you. You know what? Sometimes I pretend to be crooked. Good to see you, darling. Happy to have you here. And it's okay to be straight or gay because we love that here. If I didn't, my child would hate me. And I'm not allowed to have that. And that's my rule. All right, so that tension, right, was not a bug. It was the engine of the band. It forced them to constantly test what Evanescence actually was instead of letting it drift into something generic. In tiny venues with flickering lights and half-empty crowds, you could already feel that this was not a normal local act. So Amy didn't perform like a shy church girl. She performed like someone who knew exactly what she was carrying inside and dared you to look that way. Ben prowled the stage like a caged animal trying to escape his own head, while Amy sat almost perfectly still, conducting a storm without moving her body. People didn't just clap, they leaned forward, confused, moved, and slightly unsettled. Because, you could sense that something real was happening. Not a show, but a struggle transformed into art. And as they kept working, other musicians drifted in and out of Evanescence like passengers on a turbulent ship. Drummers, bassists, and guitar players would join, clash, leave, and be replaced. But the core never changed. Amy and Ben were the gravitational center. Their relationship wasn't romantic, but it was electric. Equal parts, attraction, connect, dependence. They need each other to make the sound exist, right? And they also drove each other absolutely insane. Rehearsals could swing from goosebumps to explosions in minutes. One moment, everyone would be crying because a song hit too close to home. The next moment, someone would slam a door because they couldn't agree on a chord or a mix. That instability is exactly why the music never felt safe or manufactured. It felt lived, bruised, alive, Evanescence didn't grow slowly. They grew like a living organism that absolutely refused to behave. By the time their early demos started circulating, they didn't sound like any other band in Arkansas, okay? And frankly, they didn't sound like most bands anywhere. Those recordings were rough, imperfect, and sometimes really messy, but they were also massive in spirit, like a cathedral built in a basement with distortion dripping off the walls. Amy's voice, it didn't sit on top of the music, it cut through it, floated above it, sank into it. And you know what? It dragged listeners into her emotional world, whether they wanted to go there or not. Ben's guitar worked. It didn't just provide rhythm, okay? It created an atmosphere, some weight, and danger, constantly pushing the song towards something darker and bigger. Labels didn't notice Evanescence, okay, because they fit a trend. They noticed them. They noticed them because they broke every expectation of what a female fronted rock band was supposed to be. True facts. Amy wasn't a decorative singer placed in front of loud men. She was the emotional engine of the entire project. The reason the songs felt haunted instead of hollow. Okay. At the same time, the push and pull between Amy and Ben, it kept sharpening the band instead of destroying it. Even though it kind of felt like it was better than you thought. Every argument, it forced them to clarify what mattered. Was Evanescence about radio hits or emotional truth, right? Was it about aggression or vulnerability? Was it spectacle or sincerity? The answer kept shifting. And you know what? That shifting became the band's identity. They weren't chasing a genre, they were chasing feeling. That moment when your chest tightens, your skin prickles, and you realize music just hit something deep inside you, late nights bred into early mornings, okay? Basement floors shook. Neighbors complained, obviously. Amy's piano echoed through thin walls while Ben cranked amps until the sound felt like a storm rolling through town. And here's the part most clean music bios skip, okay? Those years, they weren't just about music. They were about survival. Both Amy and Ben were carrying personal weight, grief, insecurity, ambition, and the pressure of feeling different in a place that rewarded sameness. That emotional intensity seeped into every single song, every rehearsal, every fight, and every breakthrough. Evanescence, Evanescence wasn't built in a studio, okay? It was built in emotional fire. By the time they were ready for the world to hear them, they weren't some blank slate waiting to be shaped by a label. Not at all. They were already a fully formed force, messy, dramatic, fragile, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Before Bring Me to Life, before MTV, before Platinum Records, Evanescence already existed as a living, breathing creature, born not from marketing, but from two fiercely different teenagers who crashed into each other at exactly the right moment and refused to apologize for their chaos. It's pretty crazy stuff, y'all. Alrighty, it's time to hear that really cool song because I need a little break. I shall return momentarily. Thank you. No.
She came from the quiet storms, built a fire from the ground, turned a whisper to a warning. Now her voice shakes the town. Every setback was a lesson. Every doubt became a key, unlocking something bigger. That's the rise of Boss B. When the lights go low, her vision hits high. She built a whole damn network off a promise and a try. Every sunrise, every moment, she's stacking legacy. This ain't just a channel, this is BBTV. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel road to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's the queen of the comeback, the storm in the stream, crafting stories out of heartbeats, making visions out of dreams. Got thunder in the hustle, got a voice that cuts clean. Every mic she touches turns the power unseen. So let further spin the numbers, let the views rise slow or fast. Boss B doesn't measure wins by echoes of the past. This moment is a pivot, this season's history. Bow down to the founder of the BBTV dynasty. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dream, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. She's got fire in the head, it's got truth in the frame. Got a heart that won't retire and a gift you can't name. Every loop, every letter, every dream she sets free. It's a love note to the world sign, Boss B. And the world keeps watching as the numbers climb, but she's counting all the moments, not the dollar signs. From the late night grind to the daylight scene, she's building something bigger than the algorithm's dream. Boss B rising, BBTV shining. Her story's rewriting, a legacy in real time. Boss B rising, BBTV's igniting. Turn the volume up, yeah, the whole world's invited. From the gravel roads to the neon dreams, she built an empire out of broken wings. Boss B rising, sky ain't even the ceiling. When she hits go live, everybody feels it. BBTV, where the stories breathe. BBTV, where the dreamers believe. Boss B rising, watch her take her place. This is BBTV, this is her grace.
Join Boss B for Ask a Bee Monday through Friday, 12 noon Central Standard Time and Jukebox Journey every Saturday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Alrighty, now we are back from our little break. Thank you so much for the patience on that one, because I got an old dog doing the pee-pee dance, and if I don't do something about it, he's going to do something about it himself. I think y'all know what I'm talking about, don't you? I know. Yeah, and that's just right over my face. Thank you. I'll take that back. So, Evanescence did not get discovered the way industry likes to tell it. They did not. Nobody magically stumbled into a basement, gasped, and said, "Okay, congratulations, you're famous." It's not how that works. What actually happened was messier, in fact, louder, more political, and way more human. Like most big breaks that look neat in hindsight, but felt chaotic in real time. As their demos started floating around, they didn't sound like a band begging for attention. They sounded like something that didn't care whether anyone was ready for them or not. Those rough recordings were imperfect, sometimes gritty, sometimes uneven, but they carried a huge emotional weight. And Amy's voice cutting straight through the noise like a blade of velvet. Ben's guitar building walls of atmosphere that felt like cinematic and instead of like heavy. People in the industry didn't hear radio potential first. They heard tension, mood, danger, and that is what hooked them, right? Labels began circling, or not because Evanescence fit a trend, but because they broke every expectation about what a female fronted rock band was supposed to be. Amy wasn't sitting pretty on top of loud guitars. She was the emotional engine of the whole operation, and that made executives both intrigued and uncomfortable. So when Wind Up Records eventually signed them, the story did not suddenly become smooth. If anything, it got sharper. The label saw dollar signs, radio play, and a potential crossover hit, right? And immediately started shaping the sound towards something they believed would sell. That is where the real friction kicked in. Amy didn't walk into that space like a compliant newcomer. I can't even read my own stuff. Okay, she walked in like someone who, pardon me, who already knew exactly what her music meant and refused to let it be diluted. Meanwhile, Ben was pulled in the opposite direction, leaning into bigger hooks, heavier production, more mainstream appeal. That split became the fault line of Evanescence in real time. So the creative tension that had once fueled them was being amplified by industry pressure, marketing meetings, deadlines that had nothing to do with art. Okay, Bring Me to Life became the perfect example of this collision. The label wanted a male rap vocal to broaden the audience, something Amy deeply resisted because it felt like her voice was being framed as incomplete without a man beside her. So the song itself carried all the hallmarks of Evanescence: haunting piano, massive chorus, emotional drama. But the addition of that rap verse turned it into a battlefield of vision versus commerce. Amy fought for control, arguing that the band, well, it should not have to compromise its identity to be accepted, while Ben and the label pushed for a version that, could dominate radio. When the song exploded anyway, it was both a victory and a contradiction. The world fell in love with Evanescence, but not entirely on Amy's terms. Fame arrived like a flood, fast, loud, and overwhelming. Just the norm, I would think. Dragging the band into a spotlight they were not fully prepared to navigate. And you know what? At the same time, the relationship between Amy and Ben was fracturing under the weight of success. So the same creative push and pull that had once sharpened them now began to break them apart. So touring, interviews, constant pressure magnified every disagreement, every insecurity, every clash over direction. By the time they were on a European tour, the tension had reached a boiling point. And in one of those most dramatic moments of the band's early history, Ben Moody abruptly left. He just left Evanescence mid-tour, walking away from the very project he helped create. To the public, it looked shocking and chaotic, of course. Behind the scenes, it was the inevitable result of two powerful personalities trying to control the same storm. Most bands would have collapsed at that moment. But, especially with their biggest hits still climbing the charts, this was where Amy Lee became more than just a singer. She became the undeniable leader of Evanescence. Instead of shrinking or panicking, she stepped forward, making it clear that the band had always been more than just her partnership with Ben. She recentered the music around her vision: piano-driven, emotionally raw, and unapologetically dramatic. In that crisis, the world discovered something that had always been true. Evanescence was never simply Amy and Ben. It was Amy's artistic world made real through collaboration. So discovery in that sense wasn't just about record sales or MTV rotation. It was about the industry discovering who actually held the creative power. The label learned that they couldn't just package Amy as a pretty front woman. Fans learned that Evanescence wasn't a fragile studio creation, but a living, breathing band that could survive internal collapse. And Amy herself learned that she could stand in the center of the storm without being swallowed by it. Something I think a lot of us wish that we could learn, right? So fame didn't soften her. It sharpened her, right? Her resolve, it sharpened it. As Fallen dominated charts around the world, Evanescence became a bridge between eras. Heavy enough for rock purists, melodic enough for mainstream listeners, emotional enough for teenagers drowning in their own feelings. But behind that success was a story of conflict and sacrifice and power shifting in real time. Getting discovered wasn't a fairy tale. It was a battlefield where Amy Lee fought to protect her art, survived the loss of her creative partner, and emerged as the true architect of Evanescence's identity. So, by that time, the lights were brightest. The band had already been tested, broken, rebuilt, proving that their rise was not luck, but endurance. And what gets lost in the clean success story is how disorienting that moment really was for Amy. Because discovery didn't just bring cameras and applause, it brought isolation, surveillance, and definitely a strange kind of pressure, well, that can twist even the strongest person. Suddenly, she wasn't making music with the friends in the basement. She was being styled, framed, interviewed, photographed, constantly translated into something digestible for television, which is a brutal whiplash for someone who had built her art out of private grief and late night honesty. Every red carpet, every tour bus, every hotel room started to feel like a mirror maze where she had to decide how much of herself to show and how much to protect. And that tension, it bled right back into the music. Meanwhile, the band around her kept changing. Members rotating, new collaborators arriving, personalities clashing, and Amy having to learn leadership in real time instead of getting the luxury of growing into it slowly. There were moments on the road where the crowd was screaming and the lights were blinding, and she felt completely alone because fame doesn't actually cure loneliness, it often sharpens it. So instead of breaking, she doubled down on her artistry, leaning even harder into the piano, the orchestration, and the emotional core that had made Evanescence unique in the first place. In that way, discovery didn't soften her, it tempered her, like metal heated, bent, and made stronger by the time Fallen was everywhere. Amy Lee wasn't just a famous singer, okay? She was a woman who had survived being thrust into the machine and come out the other side, still stubbornly herself, still willing to fight for her sound and willing to be vulnerable in a world that rewards emotional armor, right? Emotional armor. Oh, I hate that. I hate that phrase because, I mean, it's true, but who wants to have emotional armor, right? But we all do. That's rough, but we all do. And Evanescence didn't politely bridge Gen X and millennials like some neat sociology experiment. They bulldozed straight through the middle of both generations. I mean, come on, I'm Gen X and I love Evanescence. I love singing her song. I love her voice, you know? It's the lyrics, it's the thought behind it, it's the sound I hear in my voice come through too, right? But right through the middle and blew the dust everywhere, y'all, and dared everybody to deal with the feelings that came out of it. Amy Lee didn't arrive as a manufactured symbol. She walked into a rock world that was still half stuck in garage hangovers, you know? And leather jackets, emotional silence, and the unspoken rule, okay, that real rockers don't cry in public. For real. She looked at all of that like it was cute, sat down at a grand piano, and basically said, now watch this. She grew up in Houston, okay? My girl, Texas girl. You know we love you. Steeped in classical training, okay, church music, and personal loss, carrying a depth that didn't fit into the boxes the industry liked to hand women. And instead of shrinking herself to fit those boxes, she dragged the entire audience into her inner world, whether they were ready or not. I was ready because, yes, you know, Gen X was used to pain being swallowed. You suffered quietly. You made it sarcastic. You turned heartbreak into cool detachment. And then here comes Amy, barefoot, in a dress, playing piano like a thunderstorm, singing out about drowning, okay? Ghosts, trauma, and longing in front of 20,000 people who suddenly realized they actually wanted to feel together instead of pretending they were fine. At the same time, millennials were coming up on early internet forums, chat rooms, message boards, where emotional oversharing was already becoming a survival language, okay? And they latched on to Amy not because she lectured them, but because she felt like the one adult who was brave enough to scream their feelings into the sky and make them beautiful instead of shameful. What made this bridge messy and real is that neither generation fully knew what to do with her. Older rock fans respected the heaviness of and yeah, say that 5 times. Evanescence. Ah, thank you, Big Jack. Good to see ya. Evanescence, but side-eyed the theatrical drama, right? Okay. While younger fans worshipped her intensity, but worried about how much of herself she was giving away, Amy ended up carrying both roles at once. The fierce band leader fighting with labels, producers, bandmates, behind the scenes, and the emotional beacon for fans who wrote her thousands of letters about grief, depression, faith, and survival. On stage, she wasn't stomping around like a macho front person, okay? But she also wasn't hiding like a fragile flower. She stood there like a queen who knew exactly how powerful her voice was and exactly how tender her heart could be in the same breath. You could feel that tension in every show. Guitars slamming like a mosh pit while choirs floated overhead, the stained glass, right? Piano anchoring everything like a heartbeat. And Amy's voice cutting through the chaos like velvet wrapped around a blade. That sonic collision is what made the bridge undeniable. Toughness crashing into tenderness, darkness crashing into beauty, anger crashing into vulnerability, and somehow becoming something that felt sacred instead of chaotic. And let's be real, okay? The mess behind the scenes was just as much a part of this story as the music was. Evanescence was never some tidy little band. It was constant friction, lineup changes, creative fights, and industry pressure that would have crushed a lot of artists. Ben Moody, leaving at the height of their success, didn't just change the sound, it shook the foundation of the band and forced Amy to step fully into the leadership, whether she wanted to or not. Suddenly, she wasn't just the singer, she was the spine holding everything together while new musicians rotated in and out. Relationships gifted or shifted, and the label tried to push the band in directions that, well, they didn't always align with her vision, okay? Gen X rock culture didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for a woman asserting that kind of control. And, millennials didn't yet have a blueprint for what that kind of female leadership looked like in heavy music. So Amy was basically writing the rule book in real time while she still was trying to survive fame, touring, and, her own inner storms. We all have them. What's wild is how that chaos actually strengthened the bridge instead of breaking it. Every fight with the label, every lineup shift, every tour meltdown, every public misunderstanding forced Evanescence to evolve, and that evolution mirrored what both generations were going through emotionally. Gen X listeners who grew up on grunge slowly realized that vulnerability didn't make you weak, and millennials who grew up idolizing emotional honesty learned that boundaries and power still matter. Evanescence became the meeting place where those lessons collided, not in theory, but in lived human experience. You could hear in every note. The band's sound embodied that perfectly. Heavy guitars honoring rock tradition on one side, cinematic orchestration pulling the music into something larger than life on the other side, with Amy's voice sitting right in the center like a lightning rod between two storms. By the time Evanescence reached mainstream success, their role as a generational hinge was impossible to ignore. Older fans saw a band that respected rock's weight and seriousness, while younger fans saw artists who treated feelings as valid instead of embarrassing. At live shows, you'd see leather jacket Gen Xers standing shoulder to shoulder with eyeliner wearing millennials, all of them singing the same lyrics for completely different reasons. Some because it echoes their old wounds, others because, sorry, my dog is trying to distract me right now. Others because it's articulated their current ones, okay? That's not marketing. That's human connection in motion, right? And here's the part nobody talks about enough. Amy didn't just survive that pressure. She used it instead of letting the industry flatten her into a pretty front woman. As gorgeous as she is, right? She leaned harder into her artistry, piano, orchestration, lyrics that refuse to sugarcoat pain, and a stage presence that blended classical elegance with rock ferocity, right? She showed both generations that you could be dark without being cynical, theatrical without being fake, and definitely powerful without being cold. So in doing that, Evanescence didn't just sit between Gen X and millennials. They actively reshaped how both groups understood emotion and music. They proved that, pain could be ugly, beautiful, funny, messy, holy, and real all at once. And that a woman at a piano could command just as much respect as any man with a guitar. So when we talk about this bridge, we're not talking about eras on a timeline. We're talking about a living emotional crossing where two generations met inside one band, inside one voice. One chaotic, brilliant, unforgettable moment in rock history. Evanescence didn't ask permission to exist in that space. They claimed it, fought for it, bled into it, and left a mark that still hasn't faded. Okay? So, personally, I think, all right. So, that to me, I think, is why Evanescence matters beyond just hits and memories. Okay? It's a human story, not a museum piece. That's what's important to these stories for me. It's about people colliding and growing and breaking and circling back and turning all of that into something that outlives the chaos that made it. Amy didn't get here by being perfect or polite. She got here by standing her ground and learning in public and letting her art be as complicated as her life. Tonight, we didn't just trace a band. We traced how real relationships shape sound, how pain turns into power, and how one voice can sit right in the center of two generations and make them feel seen at the same time. That's the Jukebox journey. Following the people, the crossings, the consequences that all make music what it is. I'll carry this thread with us into next Saturday when we step fully into another great. And who better to have come next? Next weekend, we're going to talk about Seether. You knew that was coming. Come on. Seether's world. Look at how that same story bends from a different angle. Okay. For now, I'm going to leave you here grounded in the music, curious about the connections, and ready for what comes next. But before I do that, before I wrap it up, I want to pivot from the story just for a moment, because everything we just talked about, the messy, all those relationships, the hard lessons, the way artists grow through chaos, is exactly why I keep building spaces where real creators can talk, learn, show up for one another with the nonsense. Okay. If you're someone who wants to get better at live streaming storytelling, or just figuring out how to navigate this wild world of YouTube without losing your mind, this is your lane. In a second, I'm going to hand you off a couple of promos where real creators sit down and talk. Number one, you already seen my my Iron Sharpening Iron Universe ad after the break, and Vivi's going to give you a little bit of help on that one too. So thank you so much for being here to everyone. Big Jack, of course, and Lucy, very good to see you again, doll. Definitely good to see you, my Patty friend, and anybody else that's out there that didn't talk in the chat and I couldn't recognize, I recognize. Okay. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate you. And I do hope to see you on Monday. Y'all get back here. All right. Here you go for some tuber chat.
Before we roll on, I want to take a second to shout out Tuber Chat, because once again they showed up and held space the way real community does. This channel isn't about noise or numbers chasing, it's about consistency, respect, and actually supporting creators without strings attached. That matters more than people realize. If you're looking for a place that lifts voices instead of talking over them, Tuber Chat is that lane. I appreciate the time, the encouragement, and the steady presence more than I can properly wrap into words. So much love to the Tuber Chat crew for doing what you do and doing it the right way.
If you're enjoying this show, subscribing is the easiest way to support what's being built here on BBTV. You'll see the join button right next to subscribe. No pressure, no expectations, just an option for people who want to support the channel in a real way. We're live weekdays at 12 p.m. Central, and each day has its own focus. Same honesty, same voice, just different conversations depending on the day. And if you've got a story you want to share, send it in. Anonymous is always fine.
Boss be right.